The Knesset approves plans to double the number of Israeli settlers in the Golan Heights, territory that was seized from Syria. Ireland calls Israel's decision to close its Dublin embassy regrettable, but says it won't change its stance on the war in Gaza. Cleanup operations begin in the French overseas territory of Mayotte as officials scramble to establish a death toll from Cyclone Chido. The Israeli Knesset has approved plans to increase the number of settlers in the Golan Heights, territory that was seized from Syria in 1967. The announcement comes a week after the dramatic downfall of longtime President Bashar al-Assad. The demographic development plan to double settler numbers only applies to the area of the Golan Heights that Israel seized during the Six-Day War and later annexed in 1981. There are currently an estimated 31,000 Israelis living in settlements considered illegal under international law across the Golan Heights. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised the plan, which comes with €10 million in funding. But he also said Israel wasn't seeking a conflict with Syria.
אין לנו עניין להתעמת עם סוריה. אנחנו נקבע את מדיניות ישראל כלפי סוריה לפי המציאות המתהווה בשטח. אני מזכיר שבמשך עשרות שנים סוריה הייתה מדינת אויב אקטיבית לישראל. היא תקפה אותנו שוב ושוב, היא אפשרה לאחרים לתקוף אותנו משטחה, היא אפשרה לאיראן לחמש את חיזבאללה דרך שטחה.
Since rebel groups marched into Damascus and brought an end to al-Assad's 24-year rule, Israel has conducted hundreds of airstrikes across Syria. Officials say those strikes are aimed at destroying weapons dumps to prevent them falling into the hands of terrorists. But they've been criticized by Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Sharaa, who said they crossed red lines and risked escalating tensions across the Middle East. Ireland's Prime Minister Simon Harris has called Israel's decision to close its embassy in Dublin deeply regrettable. But he also said his government wouldn't change its position on how the war in Gaza is being fought. Israel announced on Sunday it would close its mission in the Irish capital because of what officials called extreme anti-Israel policies.
I will push back very strongly against any attempt by any country to misrepresent Ireland's position. Ireland is not anti-Israeli, but Ireland is absolutely anti the starvation of children, is absolutely anti the killing of civilians, and is absolutely pro-peace, pro-international law, and pro-human rights.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces have continued to pound Gaza's largely isolated north as the Palestinian death toll approaches 45,000. One airstrike hit the Khalil Aweda school in the town of Beit Hanun and killed at least 15 people, according to nearby Kamal Adwan Hospital, where casualties were taken. And in Gaza City, at least 17 people, including 6 women and 5 children, were killed in 3 airstrikes that hit houses sheltering displaced people. Israel's military said in a statement that it struck a terrorist cell in Gaza City and a terrorist meeting point in the Beit Hanun area. The war in Gaza began after Hamas stormed southern Israel on the 7th of October last year, killing 1,200 people and taking around 250 others hostage.
Earlier this month, Islamist opposition rebels toppled al-Assad's regime. Many came out to the street to celebrate, but Syria's Kurds in the north worry for their future. Many fear the ascendance of the Turkish-backed Islamist group who overthrew al-Assad will make it hard for the Kurds to find a new place in Syria.
صار صار تقريبا في حالة دنا طيارات تركيا درون مسير أو بحجة أهداف عسكري على أساس بس بالنهاية تعداء المراكز المدني قال لك هذا خين ترس ناف عالمي ملت شيء في عليها هنا
بلقي كريا بحضارة أنظام داعش إنجو شعارات ولوجوين داعش لسر ملي وايا سلوغان وا شعارات وا قير واناكي حمود يارتكن جو أنظام داعش إيدي بر حد نواصولي ده ديجرن نري نامن دجبرجو هشمنديا وفصاله هشمنديا داعش ندوري هذا.
Meanwhile, the Kurdish administration issued amnesty for prisoners to celebrate the fall of al-Assad's regime. It comes after the opening of prisons in areas of Syria that were previously controlled by the government.
At least 2 people were injured and an infrastructure facility damaged in the Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv after a Russian overnight drone and missile attack, regional authorities said on Sunday. Local media report that Russia had launched a total of 108 drones and an anti-aircraft missile during the night as part of the ongoing aerial campaign against Ukraine. Ukraine's Air Force said the military had successfully shot down 56 of these drones. Across the border in the Russian city of Belgorod, regional governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said the Ukrainian drone attack had killed a 9-year-old boy. Gladkov reported that 37 drones had been fired on the area within a 24-hour period. One of these attacks reportedly struck a residential building in the village of Meitsky, killing the boy and injuring his mother and sister. Two Russian oil tankers were badly damaged in a storm in the Kerch Strait, spilling oil and sparking an emergency rescue operation. One tanker ran aground and had its bow torn away, with Russian media saying one person on board was killed while the rest were saved by emergency services. The second tanker was also damaged in the storm and left drifting in the same area with its crew members aboard. Ukrainian officials accused Moscow of recklessness, saying the tankers were too old to go out in a storm.
The Atreyu Festival concluded on Sunday with an address by Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, originally founded as Italy's right-wing youth festival. The week-long event has evolved into a way to celebrate Giorgia Meloni's government, which 2 years after taking office is emerging as one of the most stable in the country's history. Giorgia Meloni said that political stability, quote, is what makes Italy more credible both nationally and internationally. And she also said she's confident the government will serve its full term, and she announced that she's about to step down as the president of the ECR, supporting Poland Morawiecki as the next head of the group. On Saturday, key speakers at the cross-party summit included Lebanese Prime Minister Mikati and Argentina's President Javier Milei. We understand that the free trade deal between the EU and the Mercosur states, which include Argentina, has been reported as a central topic in Milei's discussions with Meloni. In fact, like other EU countries, Italy remains hesitant to support the deal unless it includes provisions to protect Italian farmers. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Rome.
Pope Francis and French President Emmanuel Macron met in Corsica, concluding the pontiff's trip to the French island. The Élysée Palace said the two discussed the international issues that they share. Local media report that their conversation avoided more controversial subjects, such as the constitutionalization of abortion or French-style secularism. Earlier, Francis became the first pope to visit the French island of Corsica. He had deliberately shunned the grand reopening of France's Notre Dame Cathedral last weekend, instead visiting the French island where thousands of migrants have perished. The Pope's visit to Corsica seemed more suited to his priorities, which are adamant in visiting places that do not often draw international attention.
Cleanup operations have begun in the French overseas territory of Mayotte a day after Cyclone Chido barreled into the archipelago. The French Interior Ministry said it was proving difficult to get a precise tally of fatalities, but so far 11 deaths have been confirmed. Speaking to a local TV station earlier on Sunday, Mayotte's prefect said he thought the death toll could reach 1,000. A local hospital reported that 9 people were in critical condition there and 246 others were injured. One local hospital said it was treating 246 people for injuries and that 9 were in a critical condition. Chido brought winds in excess of 220 kilometres an hour, according to the French Weather Service, ripping roofs off houses in the territory which has a population of just over 300,000. In some areas, entire neighbourhoods of metal shacks and huts were flattened, while residents reported trees had been uprooted and electricity supplies knocked out. Officials in Mayotte said it was the worst cyclone to hit the territory in almost a century. The French Interior Ministry said 1,600 police officers have been deployed to help the population and prevent potential looting. The cyclone has now made landfall on the east coast of Africa, slamming into northern Mozambique. UNICEF said Cabo Delgado province, home to around 2 million people, had been hard hit. The agency is now concerned about access to health care and the spread of waterborne diseases like cholera and malaria.
Roughly 5,000 Santas of different ages are running to raise money for Kosovo's annual charity marathon. This year they are supporting the hospital's pediatric branch for children. Meanwhile, in France, organizers were handing out the classic red and white hats and overcoats to thousands of Santas, as well as one Grinch. They all ran 10 kilometers in the annual fundraising run in southern Paris.
Le Grinch, c'est aussi l'esprit de Noël. Mais à la fin, l'histoire se termine bien. C'est un Grinch gentil quand même. C'est pas le Grinch méchant.
And in Hungary's Budapest, hundreds of runners braved the cold.
Megláttuk az első fotókat, úgy éreztük, hogy itt a helyünk, és végül is nem tévedtünk. Olyan nagy buli ez az egész, és olyan élményt ad nekünk is, és azt látjuk, hogy azoknak az embereknek is, akik.
The run is in its 21st year, with entry fees going to charities during the holiday season.